What is up, guys? Welcome back. Or I guess I should explain what the gameplay is. The gameplay is just me playing League of Legends against all bots, even bots on my team. And the reason I picked this is because it is the best chance for me to get cool clips to actually watch, and also because I actually like playing it to get better mechanically. And so that is why you are seeing what you're seeing. But the biggest reason is because I want to talk a little bit about League of Legends. So League of Legends I started watching and playing around midsummer, around June, July-ish or something like that. And I started to watch the LCS, the NA LCS specifically. And I started to really like it. And if you know my history, I fell in love with fighting game community, I fell in love with MLG, and even sports. Like I followed baseball for a period of time, I followed basketball on and off, and I love football. So I like watching a lot of competitive things. I like watching people at their best who worked really hard to get there, just perform. And I like seeing people perform miraculous things, basically. And League of Legends is no different. And I kind of want to talk about why I believe League of Legends has probably one of the coolest and highest, roller coaster ride. Their style, their setup, I guess, and layout of their tournament and season and stuff like that is probably the most interesting to me. So if you are used to MLG or fighting games, you will know about the 3-day tournament, and if you like tennis as well, actually, I believe tennis is very similar. Basically, these are just, you have a single tournament, and by the end of this tournament you will have a champion, and that is basically it. And you are the champion of that tournament. You are not the champion of the world or anything like that. You are just champion of that tournament. And while that gives you a lot of content, it doesn't give you a lot of stories, in my opinion. You'll have a story of like, is the best player gonna win? Is the defending champion gonna win? Is the best player okay? The stories going in, there's just not quite as much if you don't have actual things to kind of base off of. Nowadays a lot of pro gamers are streaming, and you can kind of see if they're struggling or something like that. But in the end, it's just kind of, the stories will be created at the tournament. And so past that, there's really not many stories going in. It'll create some stories coming out, but you have to get people interested in the first place, right? So that's probably my biggest reason I don't like it as much. But what's the difference between League of Legends and something like football? So both football and League of Legends they're both team sports. First off, they both have a season, basically like a regular season, where all the teams play each other, and then the best records go into playoffs. But the two biggest difference here is that at the end of the playoffs, you don't really quite have a champion. You have the best of the North American, the Europe, the Asian, stuff like that, but you don't really have the actual champion yet. And the other big difference actually is if you are the worst team, or one of the worst teams in the league, there's a chance you will not be back for the next season. And while I don't think it's as fun to watch, because if your favorite team happened to be 6th place, which is the highest you can be but still be sending into relegation, which is what it's called. And basically what relegation is this, at least this split, the bottom 3 teams are going to be sent to relegation and be fighting against amateur teams who are earning their spot to fight for their chance to get into the LCS regular season. And it's such a heartbreaking thing, but it's such a cool thing as well. When the Lions went 0-16 in football, they really didn't have much pressure on, that team was still going to be part of the NFL. I mean, to an extent, there is this part of like, if you are a struggling player on a struggling team, they're going to try to replace you, or you may be cut straight out. But at the same time, in League of Legends, you can be the strongest player on a weak team, but you can still be kicked out if your team is not strong enough together. And it's such an interesting and such a low point of people's lives, it seems like. And I personally don't like watching train wrecks or anything like that, but it is interesting. It is interesting to watch. And I guess at the same time, you can also see it as the rise of amateur teams, right? These teams that come out of nowhere and make it into the regular season. So that's a big difference between professional leagues and League of Legends, and it's something I find really interesting. And actually, what kind of sucks actually is the sixth seed was not determined by the regular season record, but by the playoffs. So in the playoffs, you ended up having 6 teams go to playoffs. 3 of those teams will make it to Worlds, which I'll get to, and then 1 team will end up going to relegation, and then 2 other teams will just be safe and just kind of be stuck in nowhere land, nowhere land or whatever. And in the end, this season or this split or whatever, Curse, who is the 4th seed, ended up losing to Dignitas and then losing to CLG, and now put into 6th seed, and I can't say 6th. And now they're in danger of losing their jobs, and that's such a scary thing. But you know, at the same time, they were part of the LCS, and these amateur teams don't have as much practice, so it's kind of interesting thing. But you also have a team like Cloud9, which actually just this split came in and now had the highest win record of any LCS team ever in any region. And you know, all these things are interesting. It kind of sucks that as a playoff team, but you know, it's weird because like playoffs, you know, when you hear football players talk about playoffs, they're like, it's one and done. This is our chance. But it's like, if you lose, okay, you're just slightly better than the regular teams that didn't make it. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't. It's actually, you're still better than the other teams. But if you at least in this very playoff, if you did not perform well in this playoff, you could lose your job. And that's insane to me. But anyways, that's the relegation part. The next interesting part to me is the Worlds. So, you know, there's the Olympics, but the Olympics is held every 4 years. And and most teams in general just don't play each other. I'm sure some Olympic sports events do, I believe, but they're not as widely broadcasted, at least in America. But, you know, when the NFL plays their Super Bowl, they're crowned the world champions, quote unquote. I did little air quotes, but you can't see that. And it's such a false leading thing. Granted, America is the only place that plays American football all that seriously, to my knowledge. There's like Canada, right? And that's probably the only other major one. And so while it's probably true, it's not really earned, in my opinion. And something like League of Legends has Worlds, and it has it, I believe, for every season. I'm not 100% sure. But going to Worlds, you know, the 3 top NA teams are going to go up against the top 3 EU teams. They're going to go up against Korean teams. They're going to go against Chinese teams, and I think a Filipino team and a Taiwanese team, something like that. And you know, this is a real world championship, and whoever wins will be called the world champions. And you know, and these international tournaments are always probably some of the most exciting. That's why the Olympics are always so big, right? You know, you're always rooting for your country, and it gives it a lot of pride. And to be able to, you know, do it every single season, or at least to my knowledge, every single season, is such a cool thing to do. But yeah, I mean, world championships or worlds are coming up very soon for League of Legends. I'm going to be watching that. They will be coming, I believe, around the 15th of September. And I'm excited to watch it. This is the first time we'll be seeing, you know, the NA talent, especially with like Cloud9 going up against, you know, Chinese and Korean teams, which I believe are the strongest, or here are the strongest. And yeah, I mean, overall, like I said, the highs and the lows of League of Legends is it's like the highest and lowest of both points. You can either lose your job, or you can be literally crowned the best in the world. And I think that's such a cool aspect of League of Legends that I'm really enjoying. And you know, and the things I was talking about with the 3-day tournaments is the stories, right? I'm going back a little bit here. Going into the playoffs, TSM and CLG are 2 very storied franchises, at least for League of Legends. And the big thing here was TSM was 3rd seed versus the 6th seed in CLG. But the big thing was CLG had actually won all 4 games against TSM in the regular season. That is not a statistic you will get in a 3-day tournament. You know, you can talk about how, oh, this player beat this player in the last tournament, but you know, it's like there's so many different things that can happen. Maybe the guy was sick, maybe he wasn't playing his real team, or whatever. For whatever reason, he was just not at his top. But if you play, you know, if you play a team 4 times, to beat them 4 times at 4 different weeks, you really have no excuse there. And so when TSM beat them, it was even bigger and, you know, more surprising. And even though it was the 6th versus 3rd seed, you know, so in the end, I think those kind of stories are developed more and more through a season, through playing multiple games rather than just playing a big tournament. And yeah, so that's basically my thing. I just want to talk a little bit about League of Legends, and yeah, see you guys later. Adios.